good evening, good afternoon, everybody. Hope you're doing absolutely fantastic. Let me enable the chat so that you can get involved. I hope you can hear me. I hope that you can hear what I'm saying. Everything is absolutely fine. Put the chat on here. How are we doing? Aha, let's see. Chat with everybody. Let me know how you're doing. Let me know if you can hear me. Let me know if you are able to see the slides. Give me some Bentham science. It would be absolutely fantastic if you could let me know how you're doing. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you, Julia. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yes, Dr. Burek, how are you doing? Fantastic. Wonderful to see you. Fantastic, fantastic, fantastic. Great, great, great. Magdalena Malgozata. Fantastic. Forgive my Polish pronunciation. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I will not turn my screen on. I hope that you do not mind. Hope that's okay. But fantastic. As we go through our presentation today, we will be able to put questions, to put comments into the chat box at any time. So we will have lots of time for questions. We'll have lots of time for comments at the end of our session today. But today we are going to be talking about peer review and the power of positive communication and the future of publishing. I would like to just leave it for a moment or two to allow other colleagues joining us today to get into the Zoom room, but absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much once again, everybody, for joining us. It's absolutely great to see you all here today in what is our third Bentham Science presentation for your wonderful university over there in Poland. And I see that colleagues are raising their hands. Do put your questions into the Q&A. Do put your questions into the chat. There will be lots of time for questions at the end of our session today, which is absolutely great. My name is Gareth Dyke. I will be your trainer for this session today because we are going to be talking in our webinar this afternoon about three distinct things. We're going to be talking about what to know before you make a journal submission. We're going to be talking about how you can submit a paper to an international journal more effectively. And thirdly, we're going to be talking about how you can speed up the peer review process. So, as I mentioned before, everybody listening to this will get access to a recording at the end of our session. Everybody listening to this will get access to a certificate at the end of our session this afternoon. And of course, you have all of the opportunity to ask any questions that you may have, because of course we are Bentham Science. We are here to help as we help you and work with you around the academic publishing cycle, from ideas to funding to data collection, journal selection, article writing, the submission process, and our presentation today, managing the peer review and publication process. Hopefully you have papers, you have ideas, you have work that is at the different stages of the academic publishing cycle. Perhaps you've got work at different stages of the academic publishing cycle. Many academics, of course, have articles at many of the different stages of the academic publishing cycle. Who knows? But we are here to help. We are going to be guiding you. We're going to be taking you by the hand and leading you through the different sections of the academic publishing cycle as we go through our presentation today, because we're going to start with journal selection. Of course, pre-submission inquiries, you may remember some of this information from our earlier presentations in our series. You are able to dramatically speed up your chances, enhance your chances of getting your articles successfully published in leading international journals if you go ahead and make pre-submission inquiries. You've got a paper ready to submit. You're thinking about writing a paper. You've even not started to write that article yet. You can, of course, write a pre-submission inquiry to a journal editor, you can ask them, would you be interested in having my paper submitted to your journal? Making pre-submission inquiries at the earliest stages of the publication process is always an absolutely fantastic idea. And of course, you can also put your work onto preprint servers. You can put out your ideas, partially written papers, half completed ideas, even negative results can go onto those preprint servers. You get that DOI, you get that document object identifier number. You can then be able to get credit for the work that you have done. Because as you'll remember from our earlier workshops and webinars in this series, communication is the key to successful academic publishing. We all end up with letters that look like this all of the time. Dear sir, dear madam, many thanks for asking whether we would like to publish your paper. It's good and original, but unfortunately, we are simply not willing to publish it. The trouble is that the good bits were not original and the original bits were not good. It's often the case that our work gets rejected after submission to journals. So what this presentation in part is all about is helping you to make sure that you do not face that problem, that you end up getting your work successfully steered into those international journals. That's what we are here to do. That's why we are doing these training presentations. So at the beginning of the process, journal selection. You think about writing a paper and then you think about a target journal. Many successful academics around the world, researchers around the world, do not start to write until they have decided on a target journal, because every journal is different. The scope, the audience, the length. Will it be a full article? Will it be a letter? Will it be a rapid communication? You will be able to self-evaluate. When you get more experience as a researcher, you can start to think about whether the work that you've done, the research that you have, the results that you've collected would be suitable for publication in a particular journal or not. Journal selection at the start of the process can help you immeasurably with all of the different questions that researchers often have. How much to put into the introduction? What should go into the results? What kind of title should I write? What kind of abstract should I put together? This information comes from having a journal in mind before you start the research. And I see Casper is already writing, is this actually true? I haven't heard of a single researcher who aims for one specific journal. Well, Casper, I did my PhD in the UK. I worked for years in the United States. I know researchers who regularly publish in Science, in Nature. They target their research to those journals. I strongly recommend that you think at least about a journal before you get started on writing your next paper. This strategy really does work. It helps you to be effective. It helps you to save valuable time. So we're talking about journal selection, the use of preprint servers, and look, Casper and colleagues, at the journals that your international colleagues are using for their submissions. Where are successful researchers in your field getting their work published? Have a look at their websites. Have a look at their lab group setups. Have a look at where they are regularly publishing their papers and come up with a ranked list of 5 to 10 key journals in your field. These are the journals that you're going to be targeting with your research papers. When you get your work published, you're thinking, where can I aim high? But of course, you're going to have to choose appropriately. We'll give you some rules for journal selection in a moment. But of course, there is no limit to the number of pre-submission inquiries you can make to journals. You can write to 50, 100, 200, 500 journals and ask the editor, would you be interested in receiving a submission on this particular topic? And of course, the editor will say no, or the editor won't reply at all, or the editor will write back, and say, yes, Casper, yes, Agnetha, yes, Gregors, I would be very interested in seeing a submission in this particular topic area. And then, of course, you are already ahead of the game. You've already got your work into the mind of the editor. You're already getting ahead. You're already making sure that potentially your work has the potential, the chance to get published in that journal. A pre-submission inquiry, which top journals, by the way, leading journals, journals with higher impact factors are asking for anyway. This is something that you should do with all of your journal submissions. Write to editors before making submissions. You commit to nothing. You can write to as many editors as you like. There's no limit. Select the target journal effectively. Reach out with your abstract, your title, pieces of your research that you have ready for submission. And we'll help you with this. We'll provide you with an email template after this webinar that you can use for this kind of outreach, making those pre-submission inquiries. This is what it looks like. Dear editors, we are considering submitting a manuscript to your journal that is currently titled XXX. I've included the working abstract of our article below, and then give the editor some information, give them some content, give them some ideas about what the paper includes. You've got nothing to lose. We always recommend, why not write to a number of target journals at the start of the process? And of course, as well as making those pre-submission inquiries, think about the use of preprint servers. They are worth using. What are preprint servers? Well, they're online repositories for academic work. You can put your work onto preprint servers before peer review and online publication. And corrections often from the community can enhance the quality of your work, help it get up to the standard where it can be accepted for peer review in a journal. So your work gets shared very fast with other interested researchers. Peer review often happens fast and open, and journals select from preprint servers articles that they want to publish in their content, in their journal series. And people often ask us, like, won't my work get stolen? Won't I get ripped off if I put my work onto a preprint server? Don't worry. It's actually much safer to put your work onto a preprint server than not, because your priority and author intellectual property are protected by a Creative Commons license. It's better to do this than to go, for example, to a conference and give a talk about your research that's not published yet. Somebody in the audience could steal that data. Somebody in the audience could use your work in their own study. If you put your work onto a preprint server, at least you are protected because you have that DOI, that document object identifier, and that Creative Commons license. So this protects your copyright, your priority. Don't worry, CC licenses protect researchers if you go ahead and preprint that work that's not yet been peer reviewed and passed into a published journal. We've got information for you about the different kinds of Creative Commons licenses, but journals often select from preprint servers, and you can see a few of them here on the slide. This is a way for you to get feedback on your work from the community. You can get full and open peer review often on your research. And Gregorus is asking, forgive my pronunciation, I'm English, as you can hear. I'm not fantastic at pronouncing Polish names. Which preprint servers would I recommend to use? Well, the biggest one in the world is called Research Square. That's a preprint server that allows all kinds of research to be preprinted, but there are lots of preprints in specific subject areas, lots of preprint servers in specific subject areas like bioarchive, chem archive, med archive, for example. So have a look, Gregorus, like where people in your subject area are typically preprinting their research. This is an absolutely fantastic way, for example, to share your negative results. You can put your work up onto a preprint server, you can get it CC licensed, give it a DOI, it can get cited, even though it's not peer reviewed, but you can share with your research community perhaps negative results. Very, very important in experimental sciences when people are doing work, spending money, and they want to share with the community that potentially going down this blind alley in the future might be a bad idea. So, pre-printing, making pre-submission inquiries before submitting your papers. And the third thing I want to mention in this training session today is get yourself an ORCID ID, because this allows you to distinguish yourself from other researchers in 3 easy steps. Lots of people have similar names. Lots of researchers in different countries are hard to distinguish from others. A unique researcher identifying number, a persistent digital identifier that distinguishes you from other researchers, is very, very important. And by the way, lots of journals around the world, lots of publishers now are asking for these digital identifiers before you can make a submission. So often you need one before you can put your paper into a journal for submission. So do have a think about that as well. Pre-submission inquiries, the use of preprint servers, and getting yourself an ORCID identifying number, a digital identifier to distinguish yourself from other researchers, is also very, 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 very important. So we've talked so far about journal selection. We've talked about pre-submission inquiries and the use of preprint servers at the beginning of our academic publishing cycle. And of course, if you have questions, many of you are asking already in the chat, do put your questions into the chat. We will be having an open Q&A session at the end of our training today. Moving swiftly on around the academic publishing cycle, let's now start to have a think about submission as you go in and make a submission to an international journal. You've got your work finished. You've thought about where you might pre-print it. You've thought about getting an ORCID ID. You've also thought about potentially a journal to target with your research, and perhaps you've written a pre-submission inquiry to an editor. You've asked them whether they'd be interested in seeing your work sent to their journal for submission. Now it's time to actually make your submission. And to begin with, I do want to share with you some information about the different kinds of editors that we see at international journals, because the word editor can be very confusing. We see managing editors who work at handling the journal overall. We see academic editors who work on peer review, who handle incoming submissions to international journals. We see language editors who work on the English. And we see you, the author, needing help to understand and crack the system. We're here to help. We're able to help you to crack the system because, as I hope you'll realize from this presentation today, effective communication is key to successful academic publishing. It's absolutely fantastic. Agnieszka is asking, if we put a paper into a preprint repository and then publish it in a journal that's a subscription mode, not OA, do we need to delete the preprint from the repository? Absolutely not. Because, Agnieszka, the version that you'll put onto a preprint server will not have been peer reviewed. The version that you submit to the journal, that could be OA or not, will be peer reviewed. So there'll be a difference, I would hope, between the version that you preprint and the version that eventually gets published in that subscription journal. And journals almost always are happy to link the final published version of record, as it's called, the one that gets published, the final peer-reviewed version that goes into the journal, back to your preprint. So absolutely not. Everything's great. You can protect your work, Agnieszka. You can make sure that more people know about your work quickly and easily. And Agatha is asking, are all the journals accepting for publication papers which have previously been posted on preprint servers? Almost every journal says yes, Agatha, apart from very high impact factor journals like the ones like Nature and Science that want to protect what they're publishing. They want to make sure that they get the media attention from the research. But 99% of journals that researchers publish in, yes, absolutely, absolutely, you should be pre-printing, because it means that you are sharing your work quickly and effectively with the world. You're getting it out there. You're making sure that people are commenting on your work and your work gets known about. We're no longer in the age where we have to wait for years and years and years for our work to get pre-printed, for our work to get peer-reviewed, and published. So we are at that submission point in the process. And here comes your cover letter. It's absolutely critical when making a submission to a journal. Your cover letter is crucial. Don't waste the opportunity to sell your work. Don't write something dull or derivative. Please consider this manuscript for publication in your esteemed journal. Tell the editor why they should take your work seriously. When making a submission, a cover letter is very, very important. Maximize your chances of success. It's one of the first sections of the paper that the editor's going to read. So make it count. Ask yourself, why is the topic important? Why are the results significant? What is the key result? The breakthrough? Why is this an advance on previous research? And why are you submitting to this journal? Editors love it. They love it. They absolutely love it when you talk about their journal. And also, don't forget to provide reviewer suggestions in your cover letter. This is the worst kind that we see, by the way. No cover letter at all. Just people sending papers into journals and not writing anything to accompany those submissions. And this is the almost worst kind. It's a really boring one. Dear editor, thank you. Please find our paper enclosed, which we hope you will find interesting. Yours sincerely, Gareth. It's absolutely boring. It's not worth doing. You need to make sure that you put the effort and energy into your article and give the editor something they can use. Here's an example of a good one. Please find our research article enclosed, which we are submitting for publication. We're giving you a template here for putting together an effective research article cover letter. Show the editor why your research is important. Show them why it should be published in their journal. And one of the things that we'll do in follow-up to this session today is provide you with a cover letter template, so you can download that. You can use that the next time you've got to make a submission to an international journal. Make it count. Show the editor why your work is important, because of course, at higher impact factor journals, the first stage of article submission is what we call article triage. Desk editors think about papers and they consider, does it fit with the journal scope? Does this article have a clear message? Is it original? Is it important? Is it true? And is it relevant to our readers? You have to sell yourself to get through article triage. High impact factor journals want to maintain high rejection rates. And 9 out of 10 papers, of course, as you well know, that get sent to those big journals like Nature and Science get rejected before peer review. We've got to make sure that we are in that top percentage of authors that are able to see our work into those journals without any potential issues. You've got to make sure that your work gets through the peer review process and has the best possible chance of eventual acceptance. So how can you do that? Well, communicating with editors is key. And of course, after your paper's been submitted, you need to make sure that you're writing politely to editors to follow up. Don't be rude. Where's my paper? I've been waiting for 2 months, looking forward to an immediate reply. Dear editor, I'm writing to follow up on my recent submission. Perhaps I can make some suggestions for additional peer reviewers. It's very, very, very important to be effective, not just before you submit your paper to a journal, but also when you make your submission itself. Thinking about cover letters and thinking about effective editorial communication is very, very important as we move around our academic publishing cycle. And we start to think now about what happens after the paper goes into the journal and begins in the peer review process and starts to move towards publication. Because of course, you're going to get comments back from journals. Tips for responding to your reviewer's comments from an editor or reviewer's perspective. Once reviewed, of course, the comments that you get back on your paper will likely determine your article's chances of acceptance. Will they be minor or major? If the comments are major or comprehensive, then probably your paper is going to go back to the same reviewers. However, if the comments are minor, then a decision will probably be made by the editor, by the journal editor himself or herself. So how you respond to the comments that you get back after peer review is very, very important. Be comprehensive. Show your editor that you take this process seriously. And you need all those materials ready for resubmission because, of course, perseverance with the comments that you get will be key to success as you make sure that editors and peer reviewers feel good about your paper, because if they feel good, they're more likely to give your article a positive ride through the peer review process. So even the way that you write, even the way that you structure your sentences, even the way that you communicate at this stage has a big effect on the eventual outcome of your article. I would like to thank the reviewers for their interest on the topic. The reviewer has correctly pointed out. We acknowledge that. We concur. Thank you for the valuable comments. The valuable insight is much appreciated. These valuable comments significantly enhance the quality of our work, are positive ways to respond to comments you've received in peer review that will enable your reviewers to feel good about the comments that you make on their comments. They're putting in work for free on your paper, of course. So don't say, repeating the experiences would not actually change our conclusions. I do not think the reviewers understand. Be positive about how you respond to these comments. We would like to thank the 2 peer reviewers who worked on our paper for their considerable efforts and for the time they devoted to our work. We've made almost all the changes requested and we enclose a revised version. Changes to our paper can be seen in red in the main document. Our responses to comments received in review are summarized in this document, interleaved in red. Give your editors and your peer reviewers something back that enables them to understand and get something out of the revisions that you're making to your paper. Do it with different colors. Do it by interleaving comments in response to the comments that you've received in the document as peer reviews. We would like to thank you for this editorial comment. We've corrected our paper throughout. Be comprehensive. And again, in our follow-up to this webinar today, we will give you a series of templates that you can use to enable you to do this with your own articles. We'll give you a series of templates that you can use to make sure that you have the highest possible chance of getting your paper eventually accepted in your target journal. We'll provide you with an email template after the webinar. Indeed, as you communicate with journals and perhaps you feel that your paper is taking too much time, there are also ways that you can write to journals and ask for feedback in a polite way. So we'll also give you a template that you can use for following up with journals if you feel that your paper's been in review for far too long. And indeed, perhaps one of the most important ways that you can communicate with a journal editor is around when your paper gets rejected. And of course, this happens all the time. We as academics probably experience more rejection than almost any other line of work. Maybe if you worked as a salesperson for a living, you'd get rejected more often, but you are going to experience lots of rejection in your academic life. But if you genuinely think that your research was important, well done, well written, and deserves to reach that journal's audience, you can write an appeal letter to the editor. And I would recommend that you do this anyway. If you feel that your paper can be improved, to the standards required to get it into that journal, always worth appealing, because of course, what's the worst that can happen if the paper's been rejected? The worst that can happen is that it stays rejected. So very well worth always writing to the editor, having a go at making an appeal. I have several examples from my own career of papers that initially got rejected. We were then able to go back to the journal, write again, and ask them for a follow-up, perhaps in situations where we felt that the methods had not been correctly understood by the reviewers, perhaps in situations where we felt that the peer reviewers were being unkind. You might miss out on a possibility to get your work published in a leading international journal if you do not do this. So one of the keys to success as an international researcher is always to go back and appeal if you feel that your work should have the opportunity to be published in that particular journal. Hello, dear editor. Thank you for reviewing my manuscript during your busy schedule. We've made some minor modifications and we've added 2 more authors who also contributed to the paper. In addition, the introduction of the corresponding author is added to facilitate communication with peers. One of the things that journals really do not like is the addition of authors to a paper after it's been accepted. They think that you're adding what we call gift authors to the article after acceptance. You don't want to be doing that. Sending a paper to a journal requires all authors to have known about and supported the submission. So trying to add authors after acceptance immediately causes alarm at the editorial office. Any changes, any additions to authorship after journal submission are going to require explanation and approval from all currently listed authors. And journals, let me tell you, they hate having to deal with these kinds of situations. When you make a submission to a journal, you are showing that paper to the journal. You are affirming, you are attesting all of the authors on the article have agreed to the submission. Gregoros is asking, one of my papers is under review for 3 months. How long should I continue waiting for editorial decisions? Gregoros, don't wait. Communicate. I would say that after 6 to 8 weeks, it's time to write to the editor. Be constructive. Give the editor something back, but ask politely for information about your paper. The chances are it's stuck in the system because they couldn't find peer reviewers, or the peer reviewers have taken their sweet time to get back. So you do need to get back in touch with the journal editor. Go to the journal editor and ask about whether you can have more information about the paper. So I would say 3 months is long enough. Now's the time to get back in touch with the journal and ask for follow-up. So we've talked about submission. We've talked about pre-submission. We've talked about making a submission, and we've talked about dealing with articles in peer review, because of course, communication is key to your success. Maximizing your success as an international researcher depends upon being able to communicate effectively with journal editors during the process. So if you have any questions, do let us know in the Q&A. Do let us know in the chat box. We have discussed in our training session this afternoon what to know before submission, how to submit more effectively, and how you can speed up the peer review process. We are Bentham Science, and we're delighted to be doing this training presentation for you today. You can, of course, follow us on all of our different Bentham Science social media channels. And of course, if you have any questions, do get in touch. Do write your questions now into the chat box. Or if you'd like to send our sales director, Dr. Francisco Lettenstrom, an email, you absolutely can do that. His email is on the screen in front of you. I will wait for just a moment or two in case there are any questions or any feedback or any input from our audience today. If not, I will say thank you very much, everybody, for listening to this presentation this afternoon. My name's Gareth. It's been a pleasure. being here with you this afternoon. Thank you for listening to our Bentham Science presentation on academic communication throughout the publication cycle. Have an absolutely fantastic day and best wishes to you all.